Everybody, thank you for joining me. So, I've had for a few days now the John Lennon Plastic Ono Band Ultimate Edition on vinyl, deluxe box set and 2 CD editions. Once again, thank you very much to Yoko and Sean's team for sending this to me for me to enjoy and to share the details with you. I really was very honoured for that, so thank you. So I'm going to now do my initial review of what I've been going through over the last few days, because I did my unboxing videos. There's links there if you have not watched those yet. But that was me just taking it out of the box and first impressions. I've now been able to spend quite a bit of time listening to all of this stuff and going through the book and the packaging and everything, and I can give a lot more detail. I'm not going to apologise for the fact that I'm going to be reading from notes a fair bit of the time, because I've not yet got it all lodged up in here. It's too soon for that. Yeah, there's quite a bit to talk about. I'm going to start off by looking at the packaging of each of these, and then we'll move on to the music itself. So in terms of the deluxe box, the packaging, it is first rate. It's a really beautiful build. Very, very impressed with it. And also that key fact for somebody like me is that it sits really nicely up against the Imagine and the Gimme Some Truth box sets. It's a consistent approach to these boxes that we're getting. So that is really nice. The book is beautiful. It's got, I would say for the casual fan and beyond, it's got everything you would need to know about the Plastic Ono Band. If that doesn't cover it for you, there is the book that came out last year, the Who Are the Plastic Ono Band book, that goes into even more detail, but that should cover it for the vast majority of fans. Now, one thing I just wanted to pick up on here is I got a little bit confused, I'm going to admit, by some of the track listings. I couldn't quite get my head around what was on each disc by looking at this, especially round about the time of CD4. It was not clear to me at all what was, especially when I put my disc in, and the number of tracks that came up didn't seem to match what I thought it was going to be on here. So a little tip for you, if you are getting this box set, I would encourage you to go to the folder that's got the CDs in, and there is a list there for the CDs. Refer to that. That's going to take away any of your confusion. That tells you what is in here. On the back of this, it kind of tries to describe the CDs and the Blu-rays at the same time, and it's not as clear to me. I did get a little bit confused, but go to the CD booklet. That should give you some clarity on that. The other thing that I did pick up on is that on CD2, at the end, it says that it's Instant Karma, take 1. Now, I did pick up in the book for the 2 CD edition, it says that the last song is Instant Karma, take 5. Now, I've put both discs in my machine, and it is the same version on both. I don't know whether it's take 1 or take 5. I'm guessing we'll find that out in the fullness of time when people who know more than I do about the different takes actually tell us which it is. But you can tell that they're the same version on each disc, because there's a verse where John starts it with instant coffee's gonna get you, and it's the same timing and everything. So a little bit of confusion there, but I expect that to be cleared up once people who know more about it than I do start to wade in on this. In terms of the image quality itself on the front, I love what they've done here, because it's kind of, they've cleaned it up. The colours are much more brought out than, for example, if we go to the 2010 remaster here on vinyl, you can see what they've done, and it's kind of for me it's kind of what they've done with the music. You know, they've cleaned the music up, they've brought a clarity to it, and they've kind of done the same with the cover. If this had been a straight remaster of the original, or trying to be some sort of really faithful copy of the original, then that probably wouldn't be appropriate to do that. But because of the fact that this is new and this is clean and it's a remix, then I think it kind of fits that they've done that with the cover as well. But it looks gorgeous. The build quality of everything is great. Vinyl, oops, sorry, I just destroyed my McCartney cassette display there. The quality of this vinyl is really thick and sturdy, very nice. It's one thing that I did find is that on the song Isolation on the main album, on the remix, I got a bit of distortion at some of the like louder parts of the song where after you've caused so much pain, like that bit there on pain, I got some distortion. Now it may just be vinyl inherently is always going to sound a little bit different on every piece of plastic, and it might be that that's just relevant to this, but I'll be very interested to know for anybody watching this after you've heard the vinyl, or if you can remember for when you do get it, just let me know in the comments please whether or not you get that at all. But what I'll say about this vinyl is, whereas the 2018 Imagine vinyl, the remix is great, but my vinyl was a little bit noisy. I've got the clear vinyl of that. This is really quiet. So for example, you drop the needle on the record and I thought I had my volume off. I didn't. I had quite a bit of volume on. Really quiet. But I did get that little bit of distortion at one point, but might just be my copy. But yeah, really quiet piece of vinyl. A lovely thick card gatefold sleeve. That is a really nice piece of vinyl. So in terms of the packaging, it's, you know, it's up there with probably any box set that you're going to have. I think it's certainly a great fit alongside the other John Lennon boxes, and very, very nice. So that's enough about the packaging. I'm now going to start talking about the actual music. So one thing I did notice about the music is that the 2 CD contents, for example, the second disc is very, very different to what's on the second disc of the vinyl. So if you were buying one or the other and hoping to get everything that's on the first 2 discs, that's not going to work out. So you might want to have a think about what you're buying there, because the you know, it's different takes on the CD second disc compared to what it is on the vinyl, for example. So just bear that in mind. Now I'm going to come on to the main album remix a little bit later, but I'm going to go through some of the other discs first. So I will need to refer to my notes now, because there is just so much to take in here. So I was looking at the outtakes disc, and you know, traditionally with box sets, the outtake section is never normally my favourite. It's never normally the reason why I've bought it. I like the outtakes, but I'm not mad on them like some people are. Maybe that's the kind of the reason why I've never really gone in too much for bootlegs. But anyway, I think the one interesting thing that I picked out, and I'm not going to talk about every single song, I've just picked out some key moments here. And if I don't specify whether I'm talking about the vinyl or CD, then I'm just talking generally about these songs. But I found it interesting that there were several songs on these outtakes where, obviously in their early forms, John's still learning the song, he's figuring out how to do it. There were several songs where I found that he was using his guitar to play more of the melody lines than he did actually by the final version, where his voice is obviously carrying the melody. But there were songs such as Hold On, I Found Out, My Mummy's Dead, where there's early versions where that he's playing it on, for example, an acoustic guitar or maybe or an electric, and he's just finding more of the melody line with his guitar notes as he's playing it. So I found that quite interesting. The other thing that kind of became apparent to me is that on songs where he's playing on his own, like let's say for example Working Class Hero, if you compare that to something where he's in a band situation, like for example I Found Out, you can tell that John was so much more comfortable in that band situation, because it can be easy to forget really that at that point he'd not really done much at all on his own in studios. He'd always had the other Beatles there, for example, nearly always. All right, you maybe get to the stage of like the White Album when he's doing things like Julia, and he probably was working quite a lot on his own. But he'd done very little on his own, and you can hear when he's with the band, when he's got Ringo there, he's so much more relaxed, he's enjoying himself more, he's cracking jokes, and he really is the John Lennon that you knew from the 60s, who was always having a joke, playing with words, having fun. You know, it can be easy sometimes to think of a early 1970s John Lennon as a very serious person, because a lot of his music was quite serious. But John himself was just having fun a lot of the times, and it really comes across in a lot of this. So that was really, really interesting to hear. Cold Turkey Take 1 is on the outtakes. That was interesting. So the drum and bass was just there. The drum and bass that you know from Cold Turkey, that is there on take 1, pretty much 100%. But John's still working on guitar parts for it. and that it's like quite noticeably different as the guitar. And there was parts of it where I just felt it was like listening to the Pixies, but 20 years before they were doing their stuff. So some of the, like if you know Pixies' Surfer Rosa album, for example, some of what John's playing on Cold Turkey is like 20 years before what Pixies were doing. So that was really interesting. So there's a lot to pick out on those outtakes discs, and a lot to enjoy. Like I say, never normally my favourite, but there's some really interesting stuff to hear on here, mainly about how John was coping with being solo John in the studio. That was really interesting. So next up we've got the Elements mixers, and you need to be going to the deluxe box really to get those. And the Elements mixers then, this is where they are playing you either the song that you hear on the album, the take that you hear on the album, or maybe an alternate take, but it's just picking out certain elements of the songs rather than the full band, for example, if what was on there. So it allows you to focus on one part of it. So I've picked out a few that I thought were most worthy of mention, and Mother is a vocal only version, and it is the vocal take that you hear on the final record, but you have just got the whole song with John's voice. It is going to blow your mind, is that take. That is absolutely incredible. Just hearing, especially towards the end, where he repeats the you know, Mama don't go, Daddy come home part, and he just ramps it up every time. That is phenomenal. That is one of the absolute highlights of that set, is Mother vocal only. Have a listen out for that one. I don't know yet whether, I say it's in the deluxe box, I don't know whether it's going to come on Spotify and streaming, for example. That's quite possible that you might have access to that, but I certainly wouldn't guarantee it. So if you want to know that you're getting it, then you might want to think about the deluxe box. Otherwise you might be taking your chances, I don't know. Hold On then, there's a guitar and vocal version only. So it's I mean, you might not think there's much more to it than guitar and vocal anyway, but once you sort of strip it off of Ringo's sort of light drumming and other little bits that are on it, it does sound quite sparse, but it's really gorgeous and it sounds beautiful. So that was a highlight for me. Now, I found out, I was a bit unsure what I was listening to at first. I'm thinking, what's missing from here? So I had to go and like look this up in the book and figure out exactly what it was. And it's got a previously unused conga overdub on it, which sounds quite funky. So that's well worth listening for. And in each of the choruses, they've muted John's guitar, so you get to hear the other elements sort of come to the fore and take prominence. So that's pretty interesting. There's also an extra verse of lyrics in I Found Out that I don't think I'd heard before. So that was interesting. Working Class Hero. So the first thing that struck me on this. So you know, there's I'm sure you probably know there's an edit in the song, in the main album version of the song. I'll come on and talk about that more when I talk about the main album version. But I'm listening to this and thinking, well, this sounds like the main album version, but where's the edit gone? They've got rid of the edit. Well, what they'd done is they'd removed the verse 3 that has an edit in the main version. That's not here. So it's just kind of one version all the way through without any edits dropped in. So that's interesting to hear. So that was good. Isolation. They've removed the piano. My God, it sounds stark, but I mean that in a really good way. So you've got like a quiet Hammond organ in the background, and John singing Isolation, and it's just, you know how sort of dark and moody Plastic Ono Band can be in parts. Well, this makes it as moody as anything when you remove the piano from it. That's really good. You'll enjoy that. Remember, there's a version that's got no piano on it. So I think it's like the regular album version, but removing the piano and again letting everything else come to the fore. And I felt like I was listening to a White Album. It really sounds like a White Album track when you take that piano away. So that was something I really enjoyed, worth listening out for. And then God. So this was interesting. It was it's the original master of the instrumental, so all the piano and the drums and everything is from the take of the song that's on the album, but it's just got John's original guide vocal on God. So he's not singing it as you hear on the album, but it's just one for him to get the timing right and everything. And he sounds like Lou Reed. So it's like listening to Transformer, Lou Reed, with this one. It's a very weird effect, but again, you know, it's something that John did in the studio at the time, and it's a really interesting listen. It gives you a different perspective of the song. So there's some really interesting things there on the Elements mixers. I think you could have a lot of fun with those. It's a CD4 in your deluxe box, and some of this is replicated amongst the CD or the album versions is raw studio mixers, and these are really interesting if you want to feel like you are in the control room at Abbey Road while John's recording these things, because for example, any chatter that he does at the start of the song or the end of the song that would be edited out for the final version, it's all there. So it's like you are in the control room as they're performing these songs. Really, really fascinating. And I've picked out just a few key bits that I just wanted to mention. So Mother, take 91, you will find. It's on the second disc of the album. And it's on the deluxe box. Now, as far as I can tell, and somebody might know more than this, please let me know if you do, this feels to me like it's the same version that's used at the end of the Nowhere Boy movie over the closing credits. But this feels like it's at normal speed, whereas the Nowhere Boy feels as though it's maybe been speeded up and a bit higher. I think it's the same take. If it's not, it's very, very similar. So if you're familiar with that, then you will find something that's either exactly the same or very similar here. Mother Take 91 is really interesting. Give Peace a Chance. Now, I'll admit, Give Peace a Chance is a song that I've never massively been a fan of. It's just not my favourite at all, to be honest. But what you find here is, I think John's vocal is a lot more prominent, because I think it's a bit low in the mix in the original version that we all know, but you can hear it a bit better here. And also, if you want more of that song, if you want more of the sessions for that song, then this is where you're going to find it. So more than just the actual released version itself. So if you like that, that's going to be interesting. We've then got Cold Turkey Take 2. So I mentioned Take 1, that John was still sort of working on his guitar parts. Take 2, even by Take 2, the guitar part is much more fully formed here by this part. And there's that vibrato in John's voice. I think I picked up on it in the Gimme Some Truth box set that came out a few months ago. But again here, you can really hear it so much more clearly than you could on the original versions. It's like that, I don't know if he did this or not, but this is just my how I would do it if I was. It's like Cold Turkey, like that. And it's really, really prominent. So that's interesting how you hear how they go from take 1 to take 2, and they're just so much nearer to the final version even by take 2. We've then got on these raw studio mixers Instant Karma take 10. So this is stripped of all that Phil Spector wall of sound, so you know how there's all that echo on the drums and everything, which is really great. It really helps to make that final record. But this, before all that's applied, you are now, you're in the studio with John and Ringo and Klaus, and you're listening to them make this song. Because it's got none of that. It's got none of that echo. It's all been stripped back, and it's like listening to a live session. It sounds really, really good. So there's some of the highlights that I found on the raw studio mixers. You've then got in your deluxe box, the next disc is the Evolution mixers. So this is where you've kind of got a version of the song from start to finish, but it's made up of takes that are from different parts of the session. So it'll start off in sort of quite an early format, and then it kind of progresses more closely to the final version by the end. So we've got all of the album songs there in Evolution mixes. And again, I just really wanted to pick out a couple of highlights, really. I mean, it's all good, but there's a couple of things that I thought particularly interesting. So Love. The Evolution mix of Love, it's a really interesting version that they've got there. It's got drums on it, so that immediately kind of sets it apart from what you know. You've got John and Billy Preston on separate pianos, and it's quite funny because John is getting really frustrated here. He makes various mistakes. He either plays the guitar part wrong or piano part wrong, and he just goes mad. He's swearing, he's getting really frustrated, but it's quite funny to listen to. So it's interesting to hear sort of how much he was kind of trying to get it right and often not doing. So that's good. And then Well, Well, Well. we've got a version of that on the Evolution mix, which is much heavier in its early version, and the drumming's a lot wilder. And I tell you what, it reminded me of, if you've got the Paul McCartney Ram. Am I allowed to mention Paul McCartney on this John Lennon video? Yeah. That's all right. That's fine. I think we'll get away with that. In the Ram Archive edition, there's a song called Road All Night, which, if you know it, it's like really heavy drumming, and it's just a real drum groove for several minutes. Well is like that. The drumming's a lot heavier, and it sounds a little bit like Paul McCartney's Road All Night. So I found that was a really interesting one as well. So the Evolution mixers, yeah, if you want to hear the songs go from early versions through to their more polished final kind of versions, that's where you want to be for those. Your next disc in the deluxe box is your demos and jams. So again, I've picked out a few things from here that I found particularly interesting. So on the demos, original demo versions, we've got I Found Out, but it's an acoustic version. And it sounded really similar to me to, John did Gotta Serve Yourself, which is on the, I think it's on the anthology box that came out a few years ago. So it's just very much him sort of just bashing away on the acoustic guitar and singing that kind of style. So if you know Gotta Serve Yourself, there's an interesting version of I Found Out that sounds similar to that. There's a version of Mother, a demo of Mother, that's backed by a really sort of heavily tremoloed electric guitar. So that gives it a kind of an interesting new take as well. Isolation, it's very similar to the final version. It didn't really change much from start to finish, but it's kind of a rougher demo, but everything's there all in place. I particularly enjoyed that one. And Love, there's a really lo-fi demo of Love on the song, but it's right there from the start. It's almost fully formed start to finish, but even in John's demo form, everything that you know in the song from later on, it's all there right from the start. So I thought that was really interesting. And we've got quite a few jams as well. Now, just be aware, when you look at the track listing on the jams, just because you see a track listed, don't go expecting that it's going to be a full version. And like, for example, it mentions I've Got a Feeling, which I thought, oh great, I've Got a Feeling's on there. It's a few seconds of John just kind of noodling around on guitar and picking out the guitar intro to I've Got a Feeling. So a lot of them are just kind of little 30-second snippets here and there, but they're interesting. There's an Elvis parody of jams where he's just completely having fun and he's hamming it up, and it reminded me in places of You Know My Name, Look Up the Number. He's having fun. I mentioned it earlier on, and it was been really funny on some of these jams, and it sounds like you're listening to the early John Lennon, of him just sort of mucking about in the studio, and it's fun to listen to. You're not going to go away with this with fantastic cover versions of rock and roll classics, but you're just going to hear John Lennon having fun in the studio in 1970. And there's an early take of Don't Worry Kyoko, Yoko's song, and it's like PJ Harvey style. So I thought that was really interesting. Whether PJ Harvey kind of used Yoko as an influence, I don't know, but it could have been from this version of this song. It's very different to the version that's on Yoko's Fly album, which was like this is like a studio version of. There's a demo on the Wedding album re-release as a bonus track. This is like a studio quality version of that demo, so if you know that demo, this is like a studio quality version of that. So there's some really interesting demos and jams on there as well on disc 6. And okay, let's now have a look at the Blu-rays. There's 2 of them. So the Blu-ray, the 2 Blu-ray discs have got everything that's on the 6 CDs in the deluxe box, plus a bit more. So it's worth pointing out what you get on here. So with the main album remix, you've got 5.1 surround sound, Dolby Atmos, as well as high res, and it's high res 24192 kilohertz rather than on previous boxes it's been 96. So it's even more high res than it was before, and everything on that box is 192 high res. High res sounds incredible. I've had it through my system through the Blu-rays, and that sounds absolutely fantastic. As well as the 6 discs of stuff, there's the full Yoko session from. I didn't realise until getting to know all this that Yoko's Plastic Ono Band album that came out on the same day as John's was all from one session, one afternoon session, apart from one song which was a couple of years earlier that she'd done with the jazz musician Ornette Coleman. That doesn't appear on here because it's not part of the Plastic Ono Band sessions, but there's the full session here that was then sort of edited and chopped to make Yoko's album. And I went through all that last night, and so if you're in the mood for this, you can absolutely go on a trip here. But I think I would have to be in the mood. I don't think it's not something that's light background music, but if you're in the mood for this, turn the lights down low and you can just go on an absolute trip. So there's a few songs on here, the album songs. Why is a long jam. It's a little bit like I Found Out style, even a little bit Captain Beefheart I felt. Then there's like 10 minutes before Yoko appears. Then there's another sort of quarter of an hour of the song just sort of really cooking. Really, really interesting. And the best bit about this for me, and I'm not quite sure how it happened, Yoko comes in kind of mirroring exactly what John's been playing on guitar. So John's been playing this guitar part, he's been riffing it for a while, and then Yoko comes in and copies that. Now I don't know whether that's just deliberate, Yoko came in and decided to copy that, or is it something that they decided before, that right, John knew that he was going to play this and he knew that Yoko was going to come and take over doing the same thing. I had no idea which way around it was, but it's quite interesting how they've done that. Why Not is a more laid back groove, but it's the best part of 20 minutes. And I really felt like I was listening to a rock and roll equivalent of something like John Coltrane's Love Supreme, which is like, that's intense jazz. And this is intense rock and roll. And, you know, I love my jazz, but I've got to be in the mood for it. And when I'm in the mood for it, I absolutely love it. And when I'm in the mood for this was great. So that was really good. Greenfield Morning, another slow jam, and John's playing this sort of really, it's like a 1965 Beatle-y guitar riff all the way through it. So it was interesting to him playing something that didn't sound like it was from 1970. It was like Mop Top Beatle John that we were listening to, but it was almost like it was on a loop. Touch Me is a 5-minute song on Yoko's album, but it's 15 minutes of it on here, and it's a much more drum-based groove, and I found it really hard to sort of reconcile when you're listening to Ringo doing really intense drumming for 15 minutes in 1970, thinking that that's the same person who that year was doing Sentimental Journey and Bokus of Blues, and just getting my head around that that's the same person doing all those was quite interesting. And then we've got Paper Shoes, which again, John's playing a guitar riff that sounds like it's a sample from Beatles for Sale. I couldn't quite get my head around what song it was, but it sounded really like Beatles for Sale guitar John being sampled. Really interesting. And then you've got a few songs from the session that have not been released before. And again, you know, they're really sort of intense grooves, intense jams, but they're really interesting if you are in the right frame of mind for it. And I realise that we're not always going to be, and some of you, I know, like to say that you're never in the frame of mind for that. I can be sometimes, but I've got to be in the right mood. But I had a really, really enjoyable kind of couple of hours or so with Yoko's grooves yesterday, listening to that high res. So yeah, that's a really nice addition to this set. There is also on that Blu-ray, that I forgot to mention, high res versions of the B-sides to the first 3 John Lennon singles. So that's Yoko's Remember Love, Don't Worry Kyoko, and Who Has Seen the Wind. And I've certainly never had anything like a good digital version of Have I Seen the Wind, Who Has Seen the Wind previously, so I'm glad to get hold of that. So on to the main mix anyway, the main event of the evening. And whether you get the CD, the deluxe box, the vinyl, you're going to get this new remix on whatever version you get. And it's like the Imagine one, the focus has been put on John's voice, really helping that to shine through. And it really does. It really, really does. And the comments that I've got here are kind of the same for the CD and the vinyl, unless I tell you any different. So for Mother, now this to me straight away, this is the one that's got the biggest difference between the CD version and the vinyl version, and it's down to the mastering of it. I'm sure, but the CD version has a lot more treble, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I actually found that on vinyl it was almost like a lack of treble. It didn't quite punch through the same as the CD version did. Now that's the only song on the album where I've got that comment to make. The rest, it's like, you know, it's equally as good on both. So Hold On probably to me is the best sounding song on this album. Vinyl, CD, whichever, it sounds phenomenal. And I'd never ever heard, until the first time I played this remix, the double cookie. So it's not just, you know, you hear John go, cookie, and then in the other channel a second later you hear this other sort of cookie. I'd never heard it, but I heard it clear as day on this remix, and I went back to the original mix and it's there. It's always been there. I just never picked up on it. So that was really interesting to me, that it wasn't something that they'd kind of added in that had been mixed out originally. I'd just never noticed it originally. But Hold On sounds fantastic. I found out the guitar, I'm going to talk about soundstage again. I often do. The guitar had its own very prominent place in the soundstage and sounded great. It was like John's there with his guitar. You know, Ringo's there, Klaus is there, but there's John with his guitar, and that sounded really, really good. And John's vocals, a lot more up front, sounded really, really great. Working Class Hero. So that edit, it's at the start of the third verse, and you know, the more they clean this song up, the more noticeable the edit is. And when I was getting sent this stuff and I was having a chat with somebody involved in the putting together of this, I asked about the edit on Working Class Hero. You know, like, had they tried to cover it up and make it not sound as prominent? And the message I got back kind of was they'd tried a few ways of doing it, but in the end they went with this. You know, the edit's there, it's always been there, it's probably always going to be there. And, you know, don't try and hide it. But the more you clean this up, the more noticeable that is. And it sounded like John had new strings on his guitar. It was amazing. You know, it's exactly the same guitar part, but it sounds like it's been changed to new strings on the guitar. So I certainly noticed that. Isolation, the reverb on the piano sounds fantastic. The bass and John's voice are what hit you in this song as soon as they come in. They're in the room, and Klaus on bass absolutely rocks on this. I think Klaus Vormann is brilliant on this album, he really is. Next up, Remember. And this sounds really great. It's probably one of the ones where it doesn't sound too different from what you know. It's very, very faithful to the original, but John's vocal shines through here. But you're not going to learn a great deal new about the song from this version, but it sounds the cleanest and the most clarity that you've ever heard on it. Now, Love next. This is the song that I was probably most interested to hear out of anything on the album. And the reason why is going back to last year to Gimme Some Truth. I found on the Gimme Some Truth that I felt that, you know, that really quiet intro where it comes in and it's almost like you don't want to hear the song for the first 10-15 seconds, that you then want it to appear. I felt it came in a little bit bold on Gimme Some Truth, I must admit. And again, I've been learning a little bit just lately over the last week or so about what the intention was with Gimme Some Truth. That was the songs on there were not necessarily designed to sort of replace the versions of the songs that you already knew. They were designed to sound the best within the context of that album itself. So, you know, the songs were kind of, the EQ and the sequencing was so that it would work within the context of start to finish Gimme Some Truth, rather than taking out the individual songs and playing them in the album that you knew, if that makes any sense. But I felt that Love was a bit louder and bolder than I would have wanted it to have been on Gimme Some Truth. So I was really interested to hear how it came in on this version. And immediately I could tell it came in much more faithfully to the original Plastic Ono Band album than the Gimme Some Truth version did. But I now understand the reason why that did it that way. And I've got a waveform here for if that's the kind of thing that floats anybody's boat, and it's the difference between the Gimme Some Truth and this new remix. You can see that the Gimme Some Truth one, it's bigger and bolder right from the start than this new remix. This new remix version really fits the album better, and if we'd have taken the Gimme Some Truth version and plonked it in here, I think it would have sounded too much. So I was really pleased with what they did here with the song Love. Well, next, Ringo's bass drum with Klaus's bass. It's just an epic combination on this remix. It sounds really good and it really hits you like a brick. And that is the big takeaway that I took for that song, is just those two elements sounded fantastic. Look at Me. Now this was an interesting one. So there's so much more effect on the vocal here than we've heard previously. On the original mix, there's like a... After the first line, there's like a little bit of phase on the vocal, but that's much more pronounced here. And I likened it a little bit to the difference between, you know, on Sgt. Pepper's, where you've got Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and if you listen to stereo and mono, the phase effect on John's voice is a lot more pronounced in mono. Well, it's the same kind of thing here. And it's kind of right the way through. Now, on vinyl, I noticed here, if I just sort of do a comparison of the vinyl to the CD for a moment, it was really warm and rich sounding. That vinyl warmth that always gets talked about, that really shone through on Look at Me. But the phase effect on John's vocal is the thing that really hits you. It has been different to the... It's there on the original, but not to this extent. But it sounds really nice. God, next. The epic... Well, one of the epic songs on the album, but, you know, it's one of the epic songs of his whole career, I think. The clarity of John's vocal and the punch of John's vocal when it comes through really, really hits you. And I listened to this song, and then I went back and listened to the start of it when he comes in with his God is a concept line. And then I went back to the original mix and listened to that opening line again. And John sounded like he was another 20 yards behind my speakers on the original mix, whereas now he is in the room with me. It really sounds incredible. There's a real smoothness in the bass, and I think the thing with the song God, what you don't want to lose is the impact of the song, because it's just, I just think it's one of the... I think it's one of the, like, the standout moments in rock and roll history is this song. Just the impact of, for example, when he goes, I don't believe in Beatles, and it just goes quiet. And I just believe in me. There's such an impact in that song. You don't lose any of that on this remix. It sounds better than you've ever heard it before, but it sounds like it's got the oomph that it's always had. So I was really pleased with that. And then you've got the end of the album, My Mummy's Dead. Well, that is what it is. You're never going to really dramatically do anything different to that song, you know, because of the type of recording that it is. It is what it is. There's not a lot you can do with that. So it's as you would expect it to sound. So overall, this remix, I really, really like this remix, and I'm not just saying that. I'm a big fan of remixes in general, because I think there's a lot of decisions that were made in recordings 50, 55 years ago, for example, that wouldn't necessarily have been made had they had the more technology at the time. And I'm not knocking original mixes, because I think things like the original Beatles mixes, for example, are just phenomenal, especially in some of the mono mixes. But I really like what remixes are bringing out. Things, it's like I talked about in Hold On, that second cookie. It was always there. Cookie. But I'd never heard it, but it was always there. So just bringing things out and just helping you to sometimes realise what's there that you'd not figured out is something that I'm finding really interesting. And I really hope that they're going to carry on beyond this and do Sometime in New York City, which will be interesting, because it's not as well received an album as Plastic Ono, Band or Imagine is. So it'd be really interesting to see if or what gets done with that. But as I proved in my recent World Cup of Early Beatles solo albums, I can get quite a lot of enjoyment from Sometime in New York City. So I'm interested to see that. And are they going to do Double Fantasy, Walls and Bridges? I imagine they will. But let's find out. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this remix. And if you've got any questions about it, any comments, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. And thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again very soon. Goodbye.